So obviously now coming towards the performance KPIs and OKRs, how do you sort of like measure and yours goals, and what's your way of tracking it?
Yeah, I mean, in sales, everything is measured, right? I think uh, one of the one thing that's different is that I have now that I didn't have probably earlier in my career is the confidence to push back whenever there's somebody who is pushing for like activity versus results, right? So if enterprise sales is a long cycle, and so sometimes there are months or quarters where it's the revenue is not there, and so then you get pressure to make more calls, do more emails. But having done this for a while, I'm like, yeah, I understand that for a manager that is more defensible. Like, hey, look at all these metrics, and I mean, you should be doing, but you should be doing the right metrics. Like, because at the end of the year, it what matters is that I've hit my number, not that I've emailed 1,000 people. And so, even though this quarter you're telling me, do more activity, what I really need is more activity that leads to results. And so, I think sometimes you have to understand the pressure that your manager is under versus what is actually activity that drives results. And again, if you have, it's another good reason to have like a sales engagement system, because you can start to measure how many touches, how many meetings do I have before I get to the end of a deal. How much momentum is there in a deal? Are people opening my emails? Because like you can start, I would say, use every tool in your tech stack that you have access to that data. Use it to understand where you are and where you're likely to end up. Because if you have, a huge pipeline, but you don't have any next meetings on the calendar with those folks, and they're not doing what buyers do, they're not replying to your emails, they're not taking meetings, like you're not getting paid for pipeline. You're getting paid for closed one. And so you have to really I'm a big fan of using data to understand where you are in a deal and the things that actually lead to revenue. And those aren't always the things that management is going to tell you to do, because they're under different pressure and they have different metrics than you do.
Or just talking about the pressure, and obviously given what's happening in the global economies and recessions, and based upon those market changes, have you adjusted your sales strategies approach?
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding that now what people are interested in is things that allow them to do more with less or more with the same, right? It's not in the startup world, which is where we live. It's not, it used to be 2 years ago, it was growth at any cost, new logos, new acquisition. That's what we need to do. Now it is survival at any cost. It is retention. It is understanding that the customers that we have are our best future customers. How do we expand, upsell? How do we make sure they don't churn because everybody is cutting back? And so when the market shifts, you have to be able to understand the shift in messaging that has to go along with that, because otherwise, because what worked even 2 years ago, even a year ago, 18 months ago, that language now will not resonate because it's not what the market is doing now. And so you definitely have to adjust, and you have to adjust that messaging in your prospecting, but you also have to adjust it when you're looking at things like ROI or helping your champion build a business case. The same metrics that they were interested in 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, may not be the same metrics that they're interested in now. And that's why I mentioned you have to be business minded. You have to understand what's going on in the larger world around you and and how that affects your client's particular business, so that you know how to make that messaging adjust to what's happening in the moment.
Given this scenario, how would you define KPIs for a good sales team, functioning sales team in this scenario right now?
Um, sales teams are very different. You have very transactional sales all the way up through enterprise. But I think the metrics that sales teams should be looking at are understanding, is the sales cycle lengthening, right? Is it taking us more meetings, more touches to actually close? And how do we need to adjust the business based on that? They also need to look at prospecting messaging. Is the response to that the same as it was 6 months ago? Do we need to adjust the scripts that are, if we have a BDR or an SDR team, do we need to adjust those? Because the same things that worked are not what worked 6 months ago, and vice versa. So you have to be able to adjust to those. But I think just from a top leadership perspective too, understanding if sales cycles are long, that's going to affect your cash flow, right? So that's going to affect your planning down the line, and where you are, where the pipeline is and your close rates. Like when you look back at historicals, that those metrics may not be true currently, right? So you have to factor that in and not just say, okay, well, we have 3x pipeline. That was enough a year ago. You might need 5x now because people are having budget freezes, reorgs. Like you may have talked to a company 2 weeks ago and they were fine, and now they've been told, they have to scale back their budget. So I would say not making assumptions and not looking at KPIs based on historicals, but based on what the market is doing now.